hours before I noticed anything was wrong. It started out with simple stuff like various knickknacks being placed on the wrong shelves, snacks and small objects going missing, things like that. Once or twice I found the fridge left open. These made me feel like I was going crazy. There was no way anyone could be breaking into my apartment just to steal useless crap and move around some collectibles. The door was locked whenever I went to bed, and even if someone hypothetically had the key, I always made sure to bolt the door as well. I considered getting some security cameras set up, but I balked at the price when I looked into that possibility. Though the apartment was admittedly cheap, between rent and utilities I still couldn't afford to set up on an entire security system. I tried to put it out of my mind, assuming that maybe I was just sleepwalking or getting up for a midnight snack and forgetting by the next morning. I'd never been an easy sleeper. I was often prone to night terrors and other disturbances, which had only gotten worse now that I was in an unfamiliar environment. Of all the sleep problems I've experienced, by far the least pleasant is sleep paralysis. It used to happen fairly rarely, maybe once every 2 to 3 months, but after moving into the apartment, it became almost a weekly occurrence. Now usually my sleep paralysis is fairly mild. I find myself unable to move, eyes open, and I find it difficult to breathe. Sometimes I feel like there is a presence in the room with me, but before I moved, I had never experienced any form of hallucinations, visual or otherwise. I'd never seen a ghost, monster, hag, or any other sort of entity while I was paralyzed. It was only ever a sense of dread and total paralysis of the body. That changed about the same time I noticed the missing food and misplaced objects. As usual, it felt like I had woken up but couldn't move a single muscle. It was hard to breathe, and I had this awful feeling like I wasn't alone. I tried to calm myself down, to remind myself that I had been through this before, and it always wound up okay. But something felt different. It was then that I noticed the door to my bedroom slowly opening, inch by inch. I could hear the creak of the hinges as it swung inward. Someone or something was coming into my room. He peeked his head around first, dull eyes reflecting the faint glow of moonlight from my bedroom window. He was bald, with pale, flaky skin. I wanted to scream when I saw his expression, but I was still a prisoner of my own body. The man had a forced, rictus grin on his face, chipped yellow teeth clenched tightly together, grinding against one another. I watched in horror as the rest of the man's body slowly passed into the room, tiptoeing as if he were creeping up behind someone in a cartoon. The man was utterly emaciated, almost skeletal in appearance, and covered in sores and pockmarks. He was stark naked and smeared in dirt and filth. I could do nothing but watch as he slowly inched ever closer towards me, until I could feel his hot breath upon my face. It smelled like the musty odor I sometimes detected in the living room. Not once did I see his expression change. He didn't even blink as he stared at me, and I could feel hatred radiating off him like heat from a furnace. He just stood there, looking at me for what felt like hours. Eventually he turned around and slowly sneaked back out of the room, gently shutting the door behind him. A few minutes later, in my office, anywhere I thought someone could be hiding. When I found nothing, I managed to convince myself it was all a hallucination, that I was safe. Things continued about the same for a while after that. Objects still went missing from time to time. The smell in the living room stayed just as musty as it ever was, and about every week or so I'd have another sleep paralysis incident. I'd have to see. Of course, no, every time I did experience sleep paralysis, I'd have to see my unwanted visitor again. I named him Jimmy to try and reduce the terror a little bit. Putting a silly name to a horrifying face helped lessen my fear slightly. As far as sleep paralysis hallucinations went, Jimmy wasn't too bad once I started to get used to him. He never touched me or sat on my chest like some people's nightmares did. He just stood and stared. It was still deeply unpleasant, mind you, but I felt lucky that it was a consistent kind of unpleasantness, at least. Then I found the photograph. I noticed it underneath the pile of papers while I was doing some cleaning up. A picture of two women embracing in front of a waterfall. I didn't recognize either of the women, and I assumed it must have been from the previous tenant. I texted the landlord, Greg, and asked if he still had the old tenant's phone number so I could give her a call. He obliged, and within a few minutes I was calling her. She picked up after a couple rings, sounding slightly exasperated. "Hello, this is Rebecca. Who is this?" "Hi, my name is Flora. I'm the current tenant of apartment 311. I think that you may have left a photograph behind when you moved. I was wondering if you'd want to pick it up or I could mail it to you or something." There was a long pause on the other side of the phone. "Hello?" I asked. "You need to get out of that apartment. You're not safe." I honestly didn't have any response but to laugh. "Is this some kind of joke?" I asked her between chuckles. I heard her sigh with frustration. "It's not a joke, I'm serious. Things have been going missing, right? That got my attention." "How do you know that?" "It happened with me too. My girlfriend and I kept noticing things being moved or disappearing while we were asleep. Little things mostly, snacks, trinkets, nothing major. Now, I never saw this, but my girlfriend swears one time when she got up in the middle of the night to get a glass of water, she saw this naked man just staring at her. He was covered in sores and looked more like a corpse than a person. She woke me up and we called the police, of course, but they didn't find anything. I think," Rebecca paused for a moment, choosing her words. What is it?" I asked, increasingly panicked. I began to worry that Jimmy was more than just a simple hallucination. "I think 311 is haunted. We asked around to some of the other residents, and apparently the last guy to live there just disappeared. Our best guess is that he must have died and his spirit just never left. My girlfriend is into some occult stuff, so she tried cleansing, rituals, or something like that, but it didn't work. Things kept disappearing, and eventually we decided to move." I hung up the phone. It was rude, sure, but I was just so shocked that I didn't know what to do. At the very Michael Hansen, and I gasped when I saw a photograph of him. He looked exactly like Jimmy, albeit not so emaciated and filthy. I hastily packed some of my things and made arrangements to stay at a friend's house for a couple of nights, telling them that my apartment had a roach problem and the landlord needed to fumigate it. I called into work and gave them some sob story about an uncle dying, enough to get me off for a few days. With no more distractions from the ghost of Michael Hansen, I slept soundly on my friend's couch, unbothered by any sleep paralysis. The next 2 days were spent researching. I checked out dozens of books on folklore and the occult from the local library, scoured paranormal internet forums, and even watched a few episodes of some cheesy ghost hunting TV show. I was determined to figure out a way to put the spirit of Michael Hansen to rest. The stories were all wildly different, with countless potential solutions to my problem. Some sources said salt was a surefire way to banish spirits. Others said iron was a good ghost repellent, but it most simply said I should give up and move. However, one myth piqued my interest. According to some beliefs, the spirit of the unquiet dead could be tied to objects from their life, binding them to the place where the object resided. If the object which their soul was bound to was destroyed, it freed their spirit and they could move on to the afterlife. I remembered the paintings. I'd assumed that they were put there by the landlord, but it was just as possible that they were left behind by Michael. I arrived back to the apartment, determined to grab the paintings and burn them, laying Michael Hansen's soul to rest once and for all. I felt like some sort of hero, a badass monster hunter who saved the day with her intuition and a little bit of book smarts. One by one I pulled the paintings off the walls, putting them in a cardboard box. I made a mental note to buy some lighter fluid on the way to the empty lot where I planned to burn them. I approached the final painting, the one which showed a woman in a white dress beneath a tree. I pulled it off the wall and recoiled as the musty smell increased in intensity. Staring in confusion, I saw a small rectangular hole where the painting used to be, about 4 feet off the ground and 2 feet by 2 feet in length and width. I shuddered in fear, remembering that Michael's body was never found. Perhaps he was murdered, his corpse hidden in the walls by some unknown assailant. I nervously flickered on my flashlight, peered within the hole, and screamed. I ran out of apartment 311 as fast as I could before calling the police, sobbing with terror. I had been prepared to find a body, maybe cut up into little pieces and wrapped in duct tape. I was ready for death and decay and rot. There is something fascinating about ghosts, something somehow romantic about the notion that part of someone could live on even after death. There was nothing romantic about seeing the clenched-toothed grimace of Michael Hansen, glaring at me with hate as he stood in the small section of hollow wall which he had been living in for the past 6 months. That's insane. I have to admit, one of my first thoughts when they said he went missing, not that he was found dead, was that this may be a situation where he's a bit of a creep and he never actually left, you know. And it seems that was the case. That's one of my biggest fears, is people who are frogging, you know, people who are living in your home without you realizing. It's such a weird, irrational fear of mine. It just creeps me out to no extent, knowing that somebody could be in your house without you knowing. It's an awful, awful thing to think about. But at least she never got hurt, and now she has her cheap apartment. honestly, the people thing barely made the top 5. I live alone in 6C. It's my first apartment after college. 1 pan, 2 mugs, couch from Facebook Marketplace, mattress on an actual bed frame. My front door faces a long beige hallway with 5 other units, and a framed sailboat print that has been crooked since I moved in. Through the people, the hallway bends into a little fisheye world. Carpet, elevator, sailboat, the occasional neighbour holding takeout. I use the people constantly. Everyone does, right? You hear a knock, you look. That is what the people is for. At 9:42 that night, someone knocked. 3 taps. Soft. It didn't sound like a delivery knock, nor a friendly knock, not even a maintenance knock. 3 carefully spaced out taps. I was on the couch eating cereal out of a measuring cup because my bowls were dirty. I paused my show and walked to the door with the spoon still in my hand. Then I remembered the email. For a second I actually laughed. The idea of standing inside my own apartment and being afraid of people felt really silly. Like being warned not to look into a mirror after midnight. Another knock. 3 taps. I said, "Who is it?" No answer. I leaned closer. Hello. Still nothing. My eyes were maybe 2 inches from the people when my phone buzzed. Another email with the same subject line. Important resident safety notice. This one said, residents are reminded not to use their door viewers after 9 p.m. If you have already looked in the night, remain inside your unit and do not answer the door. I stared at it. Then, from the other side of the door, someone whispered, "Don't worry, you haven't looked yet." I backed up so fast I hit the little table by the door and knocked my keys to the floor. I called the front desk. Voicemail. I called Natalie. No answer. The knocking started again while the phone rang. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. I called 911. I don't know what happened. I might have hit the wrong thing. Maybe the building's intercom app glitched. My hands were definitely shaking too much, but the call connected to the front desk. A woman answered. "Good evening. Thank you for calling the Marwick Residences." Her voice sounded normal and bored. "There's someone outside my door," I said. "What unit?" 6C. A pause. Then she said, "Have you used your people tonight?" "No." "Are you sure?" "Yep." The knocking stopped. The woman exhaled. "Then don't start now," she said. "What's going on? Do you live alone?" I always hated that question. Why do you live alone? I didn't answer. There was paper shuffling on her end, like she was looking through a folder. Then she said, "Please move away from your door." "Who's out there?" "Maintenance has been notified." "At night. It's almost 10. Please move away from your door." "What's the maintenance code?" Silence. Every work order in our building had a code. They used it for everything. Leaky sink, broken outlet. That one time a raccoon got into the trash room. Maintenance always gave the code before entering. The woman said, "Excuse me." "The work order code," I said. "If maintenance is coming, what's the code?" Another pause. Then she hung up. That was when Natalie called me back. Before I could say anything, she said, "Are you home right now?" "Yeah." "Can you lock your bedroom door?" My stomach dropped. "What? Why?" "Is your bedroom door locked?" "No. Why?" "I need you to listen and try not to freak out. I got pictures from your number." I looked at my phone. Our text was from the vent. The picture was taken from the little square vent above my closet door. The one that rattled whenever the heat came on. The one I had complained about twice to management. In the picture, I was looking down at the skirt. I had no idea I was being watched. The knock came again. 3 taps. I almost threw the phone. Natalie said, "Marie, don't open the door." I'm definitely not going to open the door. Don't look through the peephole either. I know. No, she said. I mean, don't. I think that's how they know. I looked at the door. The peephole was just a small dark dot. Natalie said, "The pictures are old, but the text you're sending me are live." What do you mean? Another image came through. My bedroom again. Me asleep. One arm under the pillow, blanket kicked halfway off because my apartment is always too hot. Taken from the vent. Below the photo was a message I hadn't typed. "She's home." I stopped breathing. Outside my door, a man said, "Maintenance." His voice was calm, tired and slightly irritated. "Ma'am," he said, "we need to come in." I said nothing. He knocked again. 3 taps. "Ma'am, I need you to look through the peephole and confirm it's me." Natalie whispered, "Please, don't open it." I pressed the phone to my ear so hard it hurt. The man outside sighed. "Marie," he said, "you live alone. You need to let someone help you." I went cold. Marie isn't on my lease. It isn't on my mailbox. It isn't the name I use for deliveries or bills or maintenance requests. It isn't even close to my real name. It's a nickname from college. 3 people call me that, and all 3 of them know me no better than to say it through a locked door at night. "Marie," he repeated, "open the door." I backed away from the door. That was when I understood the warning. It wasn't because the peephole was specifically dangerous. It was because if you looked through it, whoever was outside could see the light change, or the shadow of your eye, or whatever tiny movement told them that someone was standing on the other side. They weren't warning us not to open the door. They were warning us not to prove we were home. The man outside said, "We can hear you." I covered my mouth with my hand. Another man spoke from further down the hall. "Is she looking?" The first one said, "Not yet." My phone buzzed again. Another picture. This one was not of my bedroom. It was of my hallway, my door, the man outside it. He had a toolbox in one hand. Behind him stood 2 other men. One wore a dark hoodie, one had a clipboard. The clipboard bothered me the most. I don't know why. Maybe because it made the whole thing feel and look official. I whispered, "Natalie, could you call the police?" I did. "When?" 2 minutes ago. How far? I don't know. There was another knock. 3 taps. Then the man said, "Don't make this difficult." The doorknob turned slowly, once to the left, once to the right, then it stopped. I had locked it with a double 2. I'd never loved myself more than I did in that moment. The man outside said, "Good girl," like he was pleased. Then something metal slid into the lock. I ran to the kitchen and grabbed a chair, wedging it under the knob even though I knew that mostly worked in movies. Then I dragged the little table over, then my laundry basket, then the broken floor lamp I kept meaning to throw away. The man outside said, "Marie." I didn't answer. "I know you're scared." I stayed quiet. "That's okay," he said. "Women get scared." My skin went cold. Then he said, "You should have just looked when we knocked." The lock clicked, not all the way, just enough. Natalie was crying. outside laughed softly. Then he said, through the door, "Check the closet." I am not checking the closet. I am sitting with my back against the kitchen cabinets, typing this with one hand while holding a knife in the other. My hand is shaking so badly that I keep hitting the wrong letters. The police are coming, I think. Natalie is still on the phone, I think. The men in the hallway have stopped knocking. A few minutes ago, something small slid under my door. A photograph. Not a digital this time, but printed. I haven't touched it, but I can see it from here. It's a picture of me sitting exactly where I am sitting now, back against the cabinets, phone in one hand, knife in the other. The angle is from above, from the kitchen vent. I picked it up. On the back, written in black marker, are 6 words. You locked him in with you. That is so creepy. That is so creepy. Creepy. I don't know, like, surely this has to be supernatural, right? Because if it was a home intruder thing, how do they know the name Marie? Like, they wouldn't go through all that effort just for one random tenant. Surely, like, like, how are they sending the pictures from their phone to a friend when they're not on her end of the phone, you know? And then on top of that, it's, oh, someone said in the comments, is Natalie one of the people who call you Marie? One of the 3 people, otherwise that may not be Natalie. I didn't even think about that. That's so creepy. That one really is creepy to me. Okay, we have one more. Before I get too hot and melt into a puddle. Here it is. This one is by Kira 1006. It's titled, I do specialized cleanup work for apartments where people have died, but I've never seen anything like this before. I'm a self-employed specialist cleaner for apartments where people have died, usually old people. Grandparents whose families want the place emptied and cleaned so it can be sold as quickly as possible. It never bothered me, not until tonight. I had taken on too many jobs again, blinded by the extra money, so by the time I reached the last house, it was already dark. The place stood in the middle of nowhere. When I parked at the entrance, I had the uneasy feeling that this would not be a quick job. The moment I stepped inside, I realized the house hadn't been emptied yet. Everything the old man had owned was still there, exactly where he had left it. Normally the family would have removed the furniture and the personal belongings before calling me in, leaving me to do the final cleanup. A sheet of paper rested on the desk near the entrance. Sorry, but there were complications with the transport service. Please just clean as much as you can. The place where he died is in the living room. I frowned at the note. Why hadn't they simply called me? Maybe they were afraid I would refuse the job if I knew beforehand. But I was already here, and I guessed I would do my best. I had been right about one thing though. This would not be quick. As I moved through the house, a strange sadness slowly crept over me. Family pictures covered the walls, the old man smiling into the camera, the old man eating dinner with his family, the old man sitting in an armchair with thick glasses on, reading a book while a cat rested in his lap. He had looked happy, and now he was gone. The house itself was small. A living room, a bedroom, a kitchen, and a bathroom. Nothing more. The subtle stench of death hit me the moment I entered the living room. There was a dark stain on the floor, roughly the size of a human body. This had to be where he died. The problem with elderly people living alone is that their bodies are often discovered days after death, once decomposition has already begun. rid of it. It took a lot of scrubbing and even more cursing. After the long day, my back had started to ache, so I stayed sitting on the floor for a moment, letting myself rest while my eyes wandered through the living room. A small dinner table for two in the middle, and there in the corner was the armchair from the photographs. To the right stood a bookshelf filled with old novels whose authors meant nothing to me. On the left side of the chair stood a large full-body mirror. I glanced at my reflection and saw a tired, miserable face staring back at me, silently asking why the hell I always had to be so greedy. I could have been home by now, in bed with Laura. I shook the thought away, pushed myself to my feet, and opened the windows to air out the chemical smell. Then I headed back outside to grab the coffee I had bought on the drive here. It was going to be a long night and I needed the caffeine. When I returned to the living room, I still felt completely drained. There was an old television in the corner and I figured having some background noise might make the work a little less miserable, so I turned it on. Only static greeted me. I sighed and switched it off again. The moment I placed the remote back onto the table and turned away, the television flickered back to life behind me, filling the room once more with loud static. I gasped under my breath. The old thing was annoying, and what I didn't want to admit to myself was that it genuinely unsettled me, even though I was a grown man. I turned it off again and forced myself back to work. An hour later, I finished the bathroom. 2 hours after that, the kitchen was done as well, and I returned to the living room. The smell of chemicals had finally faded. I closed the window again, quietly humming some half-forgotten melody to myself. A loud noise suddenly echoed through the room, making me jump. I spun around too quickly and nearly made myself dizzy. A book lay on the floor in front of the large bookshelf. It must have fallen out somehow. But how? I stared at it for a moment. Nothing happened. Pressing my lips together, I slowly approached it. There was no title on the cover, no author's name, just black leather, worn and cracked with age. I bent down, picked it up, and instead of putting it back immediately, I opened it. A strange symbol filled the first page, a triangle with a small marking branching from each corner, almost resembling the letter D. Beneath it was a single sentence. Ecce donas as offertus canas rementulum if column. I read the words aloud. Latin, maybe. The rest of the pages were blank. Meow. I looked up from the book and froze. The black cat from the photograph sat only a few feet away, staring directly at me. So that was how the book had fallen, and I had started imagining things already. Jesus. I slid the strange book back into the shelf, trying not to think about the kind of man the owner must have been, and turned toward the cat. Hey buddy, I muttered. You scared the hell out of me. I should probably take the animal back to the family who hired me. The poor thing was likely starving, maybe abandoned after their old man died. I didn't even want to consider the possibility for too long. eyes were gone. The two rotting holes stared back at me from beneath matted black fur. Flesh around its mouth had decayed away, exposing yellow teeth and parts of its jaw. More patches of rotting skin hung loose around its neck. I instinctively stumbled back toward the mirror. This time my back hit solid glass. No matter how hard I pushed, it would not let me through. Meow. The sound was no longer soft or harmless. It came out low and wet beneath the growl. Then the noises from the kitchen stopped abruptly. Silence flooded the apartment. A second later, I heard footsteps approaching fast. An old man stepped out of the corridor, trying his hands on a kitchen towel draped loosely over his shoulder. He smiled warmly at me, then looked down at the cat. "Ah, Fluff," he said gently, "you brought a new friend with you." Then his eyes settled on me, and his smile widened just a little too much. "I hope he didn't bother you too much." "No," I managed to choke out. "Good. Good." The old man gestured toward the small dinner table. "Come sit down. Have dinner with me." I swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, but I really can't stay. I still need to finish my work." I remained standing closely to the mirror, trying to sound calm while silently praying in my head. "Nonsense," the old man replied cheerfully. "I haven't had guests in such a long time. I can't let you leave hungry." He motioned toward the table. "You've worked hard back there." He nodded toward the mirror. "At least let me repay you with dinner. I just finished cooking, you know. You arrived at the perfect time." Every instinct screamed at me to run, but the look in the old man's eyes told me that refusing him would be a terrible mistake. So I nodded slowly and forced myself toward the table. The old man disappeared back into the kitchen and returned moments later carrying 2 plates. Rice and stir-fried vegetables steamed gently beneath the dim light. He placed the plates on the table alongside forks and knives before sitting down across from me. "Oh, this feels wonderful," he sighed. He tilted his head sharply to the left. Crack. Then slowly to the right. Crack. The sound of bone grinding against bone echoed softly through the apartment. "I really did miss having company," he said with a smile. "I'm sorry," I said, clearing my throat. "I accidentally stepped through the mirror, but it seems I can't go back." "Oh, no wonder you can't." The old man laughed softly and folded a napkin answer, panic suddenly flashed across his face. "Oh, forgive this foolish old man." He slapped his forehead dramatically and pushed himself up from the table so quickly the chair nearly toppled over. "You see, at my age I must be careful with what I eat. My stomach isn't what it used to be anymore." Then his eyes locked onto mine. "But you..." A wide smile spread slowly across his face. "You're a young man. Young men need meat." I watched him in frozen silence as he hurried across the room, scooped the cat into his arms and returned to the table. "Forgive me for being such a terrible host." The cat let out a sharp cry. Crack. The sound of its neck snapping echoed through the apartment. Before I could react, Roland placed the dead animal onto my plate. Dark, rotten blood poured slowly from the cat's mouth, running into the rice and soaking vegetables. The smell hit me instantly, sweet decay so thick I nearly gagged. "There we go," Roland said happily. "Eat now, dear. It's getting cold." I forced myself not to vomit. "I'm sorry. I forgot to wash my hands after the cleaning work." I tried to keep my voice steady. "Could I use your bathroom first?" "Oh, yes. Make yourself at home." I stood up and made my way toward the bathroom, trying not to move too quickly, trying not to run. The moment I stepped inside, I locked the door behind me. Every instinct screamed at me to get out of this place. I hurried to the window and pushed it open, my breath caught in my throat. There was nothing outside, just endless darkness stretching in every direction. My pulse hammered painfully in my ears as I grabbed the bar of soap from the sink and threw it out into the void. I watched it fall, and fall, and fall longer than it should have before the darkness swallowed it completely. There was no ground. I stumbled backward from the window in horror. I couldn't escape through there. A loud knock against the bathroom door made me flinch violently. "Everything all right, dear?" Roland's voice called from the other side. "Dinner is getting cold and you really should eat." I'm fine," I answered quickly. "I'd just like to stay here a little longer." My voice trembled uncontrollably. Panic clouded my thoughts as my eyes desperately searched the bathroom for something I could use as a weapon. "Oh, but I can't allow that." The warmth vanished completely from Roland's voice. "Surely you know it's rude to leave the dinner table." Then came the last sentence, and the voice speaking it could not possibly have belonged to a human being. "So come out." I froze. The doorknob slowly began to turn. Metal squeaked. Then the wall beside the lock started to crumble with a dry cracking sound until the entire lock tore free from the frame. The door swung open. Roland stood there calmly, staring at the debris scattered across the floor. "Oh dear," he sighed. "What a mess. And after you cleaned everything so nicely too. My apologies." Then he smiled again. "Now, please return to the table." I didn't dare argue. As I stepped past him, terror twisted painfully in my stomach, and I instinctively quickened my pace. He was strong, not human strong, something far beyond that. I sat back down at the table, staring once more at the dead cat lying across my plate, while Roland calmly returned to his seat across from me. "Eat." The patience had vanished from his voice now. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm not hungry." Roland looked at me silently for a moment. "You know," he said softly, "when I was a boy and refused to eat what my mother had placed in front of me, she would take my father's leather belt and teach me how I was supposed to behave." He paused. "Maybe we should begin with teaching you not to leave the dinner table," Roland said softly. "It seems you never learned that lesson either." His smile widened. so violently that my body went numb for a second before adrenaline flooded through my veins. Without thinking, I grabbed the knife from the table and dove it straight into his left eye. The blade sank in with a wet crunch and remained lodged there. Roland didn't even flinch. I stared at him in horror, unable to breathe. Oh dear, he sighed. Calmly, he wrapped his fingers around the knife handle and pulled it free together with the eyeballs still attached. And here I was, trying so hard not to eat meat. He opened his mouth and bit the eye off the blade. Crunch. The sound was wrong. I nearly vomited as he chewed slowly. Then instinct finally took over me again. I stumbled backward from the table and sprinted toward the mirror, desperately shouting the strange words from the book. Nothing happened. The mirror remained solid. Now, Roland's voice growled behind me, no longer human in the slightest. Let us begin the lesson. I spun around just in time to throw myself aside. The thing that had once been Roland slammed into the wall where I had been standing only a second earlier. He barely even resembled a man anymore. His flesh had turned yellow and purple with decay. One arm hung so naturally long that his fingertips scraped across the floor, while the other stretched across the bookshelf like the limb of some enormous insect. I grabbed a chair and smashed it against him with all my strength. The chair broke in pieces. Roland barely reacted. I ran. I rushed into the kitchen while heavy footsteps followed behind me at an almost casual pace. He wasn't even hurrying. There was nowhere to hide. I bolted into the bedroom and flattened myself behind the door. A second later, Roland charged into the room so fast the floor shook beneath him. He tripped and crashed onto the mattress with a snarl. Ah, he groaned in that distorted, corpse-like voice. Young people these days, no respect for their elders. I sprinted back into the living room. The mirror still refused to open. Then my eyes landed on the cleaning chemicals scattered across the floor. An idea hit me instantly. As Roland emerged from the hallway, I snatched up the bottle and hurled the contents directly into his face. The creature let out a scream. Not pained. Angry, clawing wildly at its remaining eye. There is no escape, it snarled. I can still hear you. But by then, the plan had already formed in my mind. Roland lunged toward me again. This time his long claws caught my shoulder, tearing through flesh in long, blaring lines. Long, burning lines, before I managed to roll away. The pain nearly made me bark out. Still, I forced myself toward the entrance door. Behind me, I could hear him charging after me. I grabbed the doorknob at the very last second and threw the door open before pressing myself flat against the wall beside it. Roland tried to stop, but his massive body carried him forward too fast. Just as he reached the doorway, I slammed both hands against his back with every ounce of strength that I had left. The creature stumbled out into the darkness beyond the entrance. A furious roar echoed through the void as it fell, and fell, and fell. The screams grew quieter and quieter until the darkness swallowed them completely. Then there was silence. I collapsed against the wall, sobbing for breath while tears streamed uncontrollably down my face. After a long time, I forced myself back into the living room. I don't know how much time has passed since then. I tried everything to return home. Nothing worked. Eventually, I realized that certain things I do on this side somehow appear on the other one as well. That is how I managed to leave this message behind. And if you are reading this now, then somehow it worked. Please, I'm begging you. I'm still trapped